Hello and welcome to UK EdChat After Hours. I'm Martin. I'm one of the helpers at UK EdChat, and you can find out more about me on Twitter. You can go to ICT Magic. If you want to find out more about what UK EdChat does, then you can go to ukedchat.com, or again, you can find us on Twitter. Now, this evening, it's a really interesting topic, which actually I didn't know a lot about until I read a particular book, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. And this evening, we're talking about emotional literacy. So it's something which I've come across briefly in the past, but not in a big way, but I've discovered lots recently researching for this webinar. So in a moment, I'm going to ask my guest to introduce himself, but just to let you know that this is a live session. So if you have questions, then you can ask them in the chat bar wherever you're watching this. If you're watching the archive version, then again, if you pop your questions wherever you're watching this, then hopefully we can get those questions to my guest and he can ask them for you, and also we can point you in the direction of other resources as well. So Richard, who are you?
Hi Martin, nice to see you. So my name's Richard Evans. I'm a secondary school teacher. I've been working with pupils 1-to-1, 1-to-2 for the last 5 years. And during that time, I've been experimenting with an emotional literacy document, let's say, which we found pretty beneficial for them. So I had the opportunity to write a book, which I've done. It's called Emotional Literacy, part of a series by Crown House Publishing called Independent On, and whatever topic you are interested in. So that's the book, and I look forward to discussing it with you.
Okay, excellent. And if you want to get a sneak peek at the book, then there is a review on the UK EdChat website. So if you go to your web search of choice and go to UK EdChat and then type in emotional literacy, then you should find it fairly easily. So going back to your book, one of the central themes in your book is about the idea of the passport. And you write, like a traditional travel document, its design can get you into new territories, which will broaden your horizons. So can you explain about how you arrived at that analogy and how the passport started its life?
Yes, certainly. It started life with a conversation with another teacher about what it was to be an able pupil, a coper, someone who does well at school. And the reason we had that discussion was because I'd been teaching literacy, she'd been teaching numeracy, and we were finding that actually, as much as these kids needed help with grammar, punctuation, reading, writing, and obviously vital issues, there was a layer that was still missing before even that. You know, do you really need to know about apostrophes before you can be comfortable with certain aspects of school, getting a good night's sleep, having a good breakfast, remembering to bring in your homework sheets? You know, the list was endless. So we sat down and came up with the questions that we thought would lead to discussions that would help these kids get on top of these things. I don't think we knew at the time that it was what you might call emotional literacy. You could just call it togetherness. Or words of a similar ilk. So that was how the passport came to be. And of course, it got named the passport because actually we were having conversations that I mean, if I've been in teaching 10 years, I'd not really had those in depth before. Not to the depth of actually, why is it that you haven't been putting your hand up in school? And once you start asking one question, more and more add on. Well, because I'm scared. Okay, I understand that. Do you know why you're scared? What's the background? And the stuff that started to come out was very revealing, and also it felt, I think, from the kids' point of view, quite cleansing. It was a way of getting stuff off your chest that were barriers to taking part in their learning. Obviously, not just in our classes, but in the school in general. So the analogy came from, you're in areas that you're not normally in, as passports permit you to do. Go travel somewhere you've not been before.
Okay, and this idea of the coper was really quite an eye-opener to me. The idea that children are not necessarily thriving, but many of them are simply coping and just about keeping their head above water, and maybe looking for solutions for these particular children is something that we need to look at much more closely. So in your section, which was titled Whirlwind, it appears that schools are almost the antithesis of the productive learning environment. Obviously, we want them to be fantastic places where learning is promoted. But in many ways, we know that modern school life isn't quite like that. So I know that obviously some of that was tongue in cheek, the way it was written. But what problems do you see which an understanding of emotional literacy could help to solve?
I think, to me, these are widespread. I mean, everyone will have a different take, and mine is of obviously a very narrow field. I've only worked in so many schools with so many children, but I think what I see amongst them and perhaps the children around, even in the inverted commas good schools, is kids actually just hanging in there sometimes, just about getting by. And maybe that's what school is. I'm not trying to be over dramatic about it. Maybe it's a rite of passage that we all have to do. It's just struck me working with children who do struggle that maybe we're not providing a foundation of learning that would really benefit them, so that they don't have to spend years not quite coping, not quite putting their hand up, never handing in a piece of homework that's neat and tidy and well organized, and they've been able to research it well. And it felt like as a teacher, you could listen and provide these little insights that would help the children to overcome these barriers quicker. And obviously the people, the kids I work with who struggle more, were going to benefit a lot. But to me, who doesn't benefit from being more together in their confidence and resilience, their organization and their presentation, their attitude to the learning? I mean, who can't learn something about those areas? I would think everybody. It's just that I guess some kids are perhaps are better supported from different areas to get through, and so they cope and they get there, and they get there in the end. But I would argue sometimes not because of school, even though school provides enormous amounts. It's phenomenal what schools provide, but maybe not the targeted stuff I'm talking about that would help smooth the way to all the great academic stuff.
Okay, so from some of the examples that you've had from your own teaching experience, what kind of percentage would you say are things which emanate from school issues, and which ones maybe emanate from outside of school? So maybe issues which are happening in the home, for example. And if they are coming from outside school, is there particular ideas or strategies which you've come across, or ones you can cite for specific examples which might work for other people who are watching this?
Yeah, well, to me, they're all interrelated, and home and school, after a while, just I think the issues anyway blur into one. So you take your issues from school, home, and possibly causes upset there, and you take your issues from home into school, and so it becomes a cycle. Now I'm presenting a very sort of negative viewpoint, but I think there's a reality to it that actually, if you're struggling with aspects of home life, let's give it. So questions on the passport: do you eat a good breakfast? Do you sleep well at night? It's surprising how many children choose that as their need, because they recognise that maybe they're getting 4 or 5 hours after. We know the issues over technology, but it might not just be that. It might be it might be anxiety, it might be perhaps, brother comes in noisily late at night, wakes someone up. These are the everyday stuff that people have busy lives, and the main thing about this passport is no one is to blame for any of this. Not the child, not the parent, not the teacher, not anybody. It's purely about, can we help that situation? Is there something someone could say to someone, i.e. you, this is trying to empower kids to say, I know you can't control other people, but you can control yourself. You can, have the power to say to someone, actually, this would really help me. But they can't, in my experience, they're not able to do that easily until you've had a conversation that clarifies things to them. So it's like a clarification of what is happening in their lives at home or school, and then enabling them to find ways to tackle it. I haven't given you an example there, I realise. But certainly as part of the conversations we had with them, it then opened up discussions with parents. Either the pupil would speak to the parent, I might speak to the parent, a teacher, if there's an issue with hand up in class or scared of the teacher. The amount of pupils I spoke to who told me that who have told me their teacher hates them. It's probably the most common thing I hear, 1-to-1, 1-to-2, my teacher hates me. Now, I know that's pupil speak, and I know there's a drama to it that perhaps belies the reality, but actually, in many cases, that's their truth, even if it's not the truth. So, that needs addressing. So, someone needs to have a conversation that says, actually, that there's grey area in, but that what you're feeling isn't necessarily what's happening. But let's have a look. How are you presenting yourself in class? How's your teacher presenting himself? What could you do to better your situation with them? It felt like lots of, emotional angst and anxiety driving some of the behaviours at school that, of course, we're also familiar with. Detentions happen ad infinitum for the same things, and they have for decades and decades and decades. And it feels to me because we don't have a foundation of emotional literacy amongst pupils and teachers and staff at school. And even if it's there, it doesn't have the opportunity to come out because everything's so rat race and so targets, results. And I feel like we need to break into that a bit.
Yeah, I think that time pressure is a real detrimental effect for many reasons, but obviously to give time to anything, especially something which isn't central to the curriculum on paper, at least. I mean, it could be argued maybe that knowing oneself and knowing one's reactions to certain stimulus is a central part of learning, but obviously on paper that's not the case. Okay, so perhaps we can talk through a particular passport and just show the viewers what we're talking about. So this is a live session. I'm just going to quickly share my screen, which will just take a minute to do, so bear with me. Okay, so hopefully you can now see what I can see.
Yeah.
Okay, super. So if you want to just talk through what everybody's seeing at the moment.
Thanks, Martin. So this is the literacy passport. There's different versions, and in fact, the book encourages you to develop your own. If you want one for numeracy, you just make up your own numeracy questions and put them in the literacy section. In the book, there's an example of an RE passport for a Year 8 class, reading passport, one for detention setting, one for parents' evenings. So the basic concept is that you're always working on three main areas: confidence and resilience, organization and presentation, attitude to learning, because that's what felt like the main hallmarks of the COPA and of school life. The other section was the variable, as in what's your main subject or topic or main area of focus with this child. If it's so they don't have so many detentions, maybe that's a detention section. If it's to prepare for parents' evening, maybe there's a section on how you're performing in all your subjects. So it's variable. But perhaps if we could look at the confidence and resilience section first, Martin, I can just explain a couple of the questions and ideas. That's it. Thank you. So 10 questions. I came up with these with another teacher because they felt like the hallmarks of confident and resilient children. But the point of the book is you can access this from Crown House's website and change them. Whatever's the truth in your place of learning, in your school, for your children, is the important thing. So for us, it was questions like, do I work well with other pupils? Do I take opportunities presented to me at school? Do I start tasks promptly? Do I share my successes with my form tutor? All the things that we probably know are the hallmarks of children who start to develop the confidence and resilience to develop their skills. So that's the first section. The second section is about organization and presentation.
Oops.
Thank you. So this is questions like, do I revise for tests at school? Do I get enough sleep at night? Do I follow the school's presentation guidelines? Am I on time for lessons? Am I prepared for lessons with the right equipment and books? So probably classic things that pupils will struggle with. So that's the second hallmark of the COPA. And then the third one is their attitude to learning, which is in the bottom right-hand section of the passport. And you've got questions like, do I pay attention in class? How well do I reflect on my teacher's comments? How well do I act on instructions in class? Quite one that brings up some interesting answers. Am I comfortable making mistakes? Am I polite to all staff at school? Do I help others with their learning? So yeah, they're probably the classic attitude to learning questions. So they're the main sections. Would you like me to talk through how it works, Martin?
A little bit. Maybe if you can explain what the 1, 2, 3 is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what kind of role the pupil would play in this as well would be great.
Yes. So you sit down with pupils and with a highlighter, and you basically give them free rein to read the questions, and either they've got 4 choices. So let's take one of the literacy skills questions. Do I use paragraphs correctly? If they don't use them correctly at all, they don't highlight anything, stays blank. If they sometimes use paragraphs correctly, they'll highlight just the 1. If they mostly use paragraphs correctly, they'll highlight 1 and 2. If they do it all the time, they'll highlight 1, 2, and 3. And for each section, you will have obviously a range of nothing, 1s, 2s, and 3s. The first thing to do, obviously, is fill the whole passport out with highlighter. You chat through the questions. You can do it after they've decided for themselves. You can do it during. But the main point is you're having little conversations. So obviously their assessment of how well they use paragraphs might be slightly different from yours as their English teacher or someone who knows. You can help guide them to get a good answer to that. Once all the sections are filled in, they have to choose one of the sections that they'd like to work on. So just one question, normally one with no highlighter or the one highlighted, that they would choose to work on for this term. So by the end of this side, you've got 4 targets highlighted, 1 in confidence and resilience, 1 in organisation and presentation, 1 in attitude to learning, and 1 in this 4th section, which, for my purposes would be literacy skills. Once you've got that, you then have to flip over your passport and we'll show you the other side of it. Lovely, thank you. So this is the same for each section. And as soon as pupils have decided what they'd like to work on, they write it under what is my need in, and in this case, confidence and resilience. So it might be to share successes with a former tutor. So that's their need. Notice not use of the word target. I think that's probably a bit of a hackneyed term anyway. And actually, when I started thinking about this, these are needs. These are things that children need to get on, to have a happy, satisfactory, purposeful, meaningful life. Target, yeah, targets are great. We all aspire to things, but actually these felt more personal than that. What I can do to meet this need is the section I think you need most time on. And what I find is you can't rush that section, because actually trying to work out why you don't say talk to teachers at school is not an easy one for children to answer. They know they don't. That they'll tell you, God, I'd never do that, sir. I'm terrified. Why would I do that? So the first conversation is about, okay, well, let's work out why it's not happening. Then let's work out if there's small things we can put in place to help it happen. Let's maybe choose one subject, one teacher that you could start with. Let's explain the benefits of maybe chatting to your teacher before the lesson, after the lesson, quietly, to explain you're not quite keeping up with something, to ask for extra support. We all know, don't we, that the children who are confident speaking to their teachers, who are good at accessing help from home, whether it's parents or online or wherever, they're the ones that get ahead, and they continue to get ahead. It's the children who are less confident of that stuff that I think you have to go back to basics, if you like, with, and build them up to something which says, you know what, you can be that child too. You can be the child who goes to your teacher after the lesson and says, excuse me, do you mind if I just have a quick word? I didn't really get that. And if it helps, taking other people with you. I think there's all sorts of ways. You just have to keep putting small steps in place to help these kids get to that. So what I can do to meet this need will probably take you the longest. And then you'll notice underneath that my feelings about my efforts to meet my needs. And the idea of this is that each week you say to the child, okay, how did you get on? We had a chat last week about you talking to your teachers, and we chose maths because that's the one you're really struggling in. And this is what I can do to meet this need. Now, invariably, we've had a chat about it. I've put it in their minds. I've said, have a go. A week one will quite often be, I didn't do that, sir. Okay, let's write it down. Didn't do that this week. How do you feel about that? A bit disappointed, or whatever it might be. And you write down whatever it is the pupil tells you, because actually is the truth and it's the reality. By week two, having had another chat about it and maybe put another step in place to help this happen, you might just get, oh, I actually managed to ask on Tuesday about such and such. And then, of course, you're then capturing feelings. How did that feel? How did that feel to speak to someone you're actually quite terrified of? You don't really do it. It's not who you are. What did that feel like? Have some of the happy drug that other kids are getting, and let's write it down. And I think when they're recording it and then they're saying, I'm quite proud of myself. I was really elated. It might seem small to us from the teacher point of view, but for some of these pupils, it's massive. And each week, obviously, you keep recording how you're getting on and the feelings that come with it. Also, I tend to write all over the passport so that you can see white spaces. I'll make notes, anything that seems pertinent, anything that seems relevant, anything that maybe is, makes me think, actually, I should look into that. I tend to write all over, and I encourage them to as well. Don't worry about the lines, just go over them. This is your sheet. It's a working document. Just express yourself on it. Finally, after week 4, you've got a choice. Sit down with the children and you work out, okay, we've been doing this for 5 or 6 weeks. Have your needs not been met? Have they been partly met? Have they been met? And they can come up with that decision on their own. But I would suggest whether they do that or you... Sorry, what I suggest is you have a conversation, whether it's before or after. I.e., okay, let's just see why you've chosen that. And my advice is always to be not to try and dive in and go, yeah, we've done that, because both you and they obviously want to, because you feel like it's something really good. But it's okay, if they're partly met, that's absolutely fine. That's probably quite normal. You're not going to suddenly change a habit of 4 or 5 years in one go, or maybe a few years. But an honest evaluation between the two of you is what's important there. And that really is the passport process. You've got 5 or 6 weeks to work through 4 different areas of school, and at the end of it, you can sit down and look back and go, okay, well that's what we've done together. And then really it's up to your school, it's up to your time. Can you then go on and do another? Or is it a case of, okay, I'll work with another pupil and their needs and come back to this pupil next term, 2 terms time, next year. It's, as we all know, this is about time, and it can't be rushed. So it's not an easy thing to bring into schools. I will certainly say that.
Okay, a couple of points from that. I'm going to unshare my screen in a second, but before I do, ask my questions to give you a little bit of thinking time. You said the word habit a couple of times there. Do you see this as a habit-forming process? And another question I wanted to ask you is, in your book, you talk about choosing your protege. Is this something which is targeted to a particular child, or is this something that you could perhaps roll out across an entire class? And while you're thinking about that, I'm hopefully going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm back in the room. So the first question on habits is absolutely. I think this is habit forming. How can we get pupils into habits that help them? And I shy away from the word good habits, because who's to judge what a good habit is? It's only good if it's good for that child. So it's personalized. It's what can help you to sort the situation out, and it'll be different for every single child. That's why you need to have the conversations about, what is it about you that's contributing to the situation. So yes, it's good habits of school. And sorry, the second question that tailed off at the end. Could you just repeat it, please? Yeah. So in your book, you talk about choosing your protege. So is this something which can be rolled out across an entire class, or is it something which you would expect to be much more targeted to a particular pupil with a particular issue that's been identified?
Yeah. My judgment, it is very hard to do across a whole class. We have experimented at one school I've been working at, and an RE teacher, made a really good fist of incorporating an RE topic and with a whole class, and he'd do the sections. And perhaps subjects like RE lend themselves more to this, more of RE and ethics, more philosophical type subject. But you can't do it to any degree of depth, obviously, with 25, 30 children, because really they all need that time with someone to work through their stuff, because obviously given free rein, pupils are used to school culture in a way. Sometimes it's the just get stuff done, the worksheet thing, and actually this is different. So I think you have to introduce them to the ideas slowly and work with them personally, and therefore, a whole class situation, it's very hard to do. I mean, that's not to underestimate. Some teachers are phenomenal at what they manage to do. So I wouldn't, I'm certainly not going to say never. Ideally, to me, it's a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2 thing. It's mentors, LSAs, TAs. I mean, brilliant. They're in brilliant positions to do this stuff, because they are the ones, aren't they, that work so closely with children. They get to know them, and actually they've probably already got a relationship that they can build on. I'm not saying teachers don't. I'm just saying they obviously tend to be managing much larger numbers. I think for the teacher themselves, why not choose one for a parents' evening? One you'd like to have just more of an impact on, and not have that sort of parents' evening where you're all looking at each other as if to say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We've got all these targets, they're the same as last year. You're shrugging your shoulders. I'm getting a bit annoyed. Your parents are, staring daggers at you. Let's break that cycle for one child. Get a passport, sit down with the child for 6 weeks before you go to parents' evening. Honestly, I mean, I've done it, and you'll be surprised how much it yields and how much better the conversations are, because the kid a bit better, they know you a bit better, they know themselves a bit better. The parents obviously are pleased because there's some sort of understanding of need and them being addressed. That's where I think teachers could benefit most. But the caveat is it takes time, and you're already shattered and overworked. So I get it.
Well, the idea of taking time actually leads me onto a really nice comment. Net bar here has said, or part of it has said, making it student-centered, except that it is hard to make a change and clear next steps. So I think she's in complete agreement there. And also, I think another, because we had a Twitter chat about this topic before our discussion now, one of the other points that was made is about the fact that there needs to be that understanding from other colleagues, especially in senior management, the fact that it is a process and it is something which is going to take a long time and it isn't going to be a quick fix. And maybe some of the traditional alternatives may be seen as something which is a little bit quicker, but maybe not something which is so long lasting. I just wanted to, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I think is maybe good to do is to experiment with is, I mean, I've got 50 questions. You don't have to have 50, you could have 5. You know, you could have a very quick targeted thing thinking, right, you know, this is key for this pupil in this situation. We're just going to do a quick round of something. You still need time to unpick the needs, obviously, but you could, you know, you just tailor it to what you need. On the wider level, you know, my feeling is, look, if people have time, if they're supported by senior leaders, then why not have a crack at it? You know, why not use the mentor time or whatever time you're given for this? But actually, I think the bigger picture is, you know, if we want this stuff to change, if we think it's important, to me, there has to be a foundation, a level brought into education that recognises that learning and behaviour are led by your emotional brain. They're your limbic system, they're your amygdalas, and they are what you know. I've read the science since writing the book. Actually, you know, I wrote the book as a practitioner, but obviously being interested in it, I started reading more about the science of it. And actually, from my reading, your emotional state is what leads to the quality of your learning, and actually your I guess the quality of your behavior in inverted commas. And you know, we know, don't we, the best teachers you ever see have this wonderful, very instinctive, natural relationship with children. They connect with them. They connect presumably with their limbic system. And therefore, having connected with the child's, you know, they're going to learn anything you throw at them. And to me, the best teachers always seem to have that. So I think there must be something in it. I think there must be something in the fact that you need to address the emotional level before you address the academic level if you want the best for every pupil.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we know that in our everyday life, if we're in a state of chronic stress, then that fight or flight system does obviously kick in. And for those teachers that do have that rapport, calming effect on the class, then yes, you do get amazing results from them. So far we've been talking about the what almost about what we're trying to tackle. But you write in your book about working out the how is actually the hardest part. So obviously every pupil is going to have a different solution to a particular barrier they're facing, but perhaps you could cite something from your own experience that perhaps viewers can take away.
Yes, if it's all right, I'll take from the book because it'll just say it more succinctly than I will. But this was to do with the question of putting your hand up, and that in order to work out the how, you know, why isn't a pupil putting their hand up? These are the sort of questions that I've come up with. Tell me, what does it feel like putting your...
I think Richard has just left us briefly, so hopefully he'll be back in a moment or two. Oh, there he comes, hopefully, any second now. It's okay, Richard, we're just covering for you.
Hi, sorry. Am I back?
No problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
You're back. Hello.
So you're talking to your pupil who's struggling to put their hand up. Tell me, what does it feel like putting your hand up in class? What goes through your mind? What do you think is going to happen? What happens normally, physically, as well as emotionally? What happens when you are chosen to answer regardless of your hand going up? Are the feelings similar to any other experience you have in life? How do you deal with that? Is there a way of making it less difficult? Can I share with you what it felt like for me when I was a child? Are there teachers with whom you feel more comfortable putting your hand up? maybe one lesson in which you could aim to put your hand up once a week or even once a day? Would you prefer to start with writing answers down on a piece of paper to show your teacher at the end? Would you be happy to ask them if they're okay with that? That's what I mean about the how. It feels like you've got to do a wide variety of questioning before you actually get to something that is doable. You know, we were all familiar with targets that just are lovely looking but just never get achieved. And to me, they don't get achieved because we're not asking the right questions or asking them in enough depth. And actually, you know, and by trying to put the stepping stones in place, I guess you give every pupil an opportunity to go, I'm going to start at this one. And if it's the first one, so be it. You know, I've had a pupil said to me recently, you know, she hasn't been reading for 2 years. And we had a conversation about this, though, and she read all the time at primary school. We had a conversation and she said, well, I don't like the way the book flaps shut all the time. And I thought, yeah, you know, if it's the practical thing of holding a book that annoys you, then you're probably not going to do it. But she loved reading. So a quick conversation about that, and suddenly we've got a Kindle going again, and she found a charger, and you know, hopefully that's what will lead to getting that habit going. But sometimes it's so mundane, the things that are stopping pupils getting up to speed with other ones, but you just don't find out unless you have these conversations.
And I really do worry about how many things which are so incredibly simple to solve go unnoticed just because teachers are not asking those particular questions, and perhaps pupils are thinking that everybody is suffering from this same particular barrier, and maybe that's another reason why they're staying quiet.
I think that's really true. Just to say, I just feel like, you know, I get it because I am one. You know, teachers just don't have the capacity in their daily schedule, do they, to be getting to the bottom of this stuff, because it's just not built in. And that's what I'm saying. To me, the system has to accommodate it, not people have to bend, you know, backwards even further to do this stuff. But the other thing is, you're completely right. You know, these sort of things will be happening all over the shop, but because they're not being discussed, perhaps, then you feel like you're the odd one out. You feel like you're the one who's crazy and everyone else is okay. You know, sorry, the person who's out of kilter and everyone else is. But as we know, you know, you start sharing things and you realise everyone's not a dissimilar version to you. And we've all got our quirks, let's face it.
Oh, Richard, thank you very much for trying to sort out some of our quirks and some of our kilter qualities. Can you just tell everybody where they can find you online, just in case they want to follow up anything that you've said or anything that they may want to read, including your book? Do you have a presence online people can?
Yes, yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Richard_Evans72. It's a little clue to my age. In fact, a kid said to me recently, he said to me, "How old are you, sir?" He was quite a forward pupil. I said, "Oh, I'm 48. And he said, "Oh, you look much older than that." And I said to him, "Oh, thank you. Thanks for sharing." But it's a weird thing. But yeah, that's where I am, at Richard_Evans72.
Yeah, at primary school, they do exactly the same thing, and they have no shame, and nor should they. So that's fantastic.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. So if you want to find out more about this session or any other, then if you go to ukedchat.com and search for whatever the title is of the webinar, so in this case, search for emotional literacy, then you should find all the links that we've discussed in this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.
Thank you.